Let me read to you a passage from the 6th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 1 to 5. It's the Gospel for Saturday of the 22nd week in Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, "One Sabbath Jesus was going through the cornfields, and his disciples began to pick some ears of corn, rub them in their hands, and eat the grain. Some of the Pharisees asked, 'Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?' Jesus answered them, 'Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions.' Then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" That's from Luke chapter 6, verse 1 to 5. It suggests thoughts about Jesus and his titles. Our text from Luke today has its direct parallels in Mark chapter 2 verse 25 and Matthew chapter 12 verse 3. May I observe in passing that some may think there is a discrepancy between Mark's account and what we read in the first book of Samuel, chapter 21 verse 1 to 2. We read in 1 Samuel that Ahimelech, and not Abiathar, his father, gave David the showbread. In Samuel 2, David appears alone, but these differences are but apparent. Our Lord in Mark only refers to the days of Abiathar, and David's companions are later mentioned as somewhere in David's company. But let us remain with Luke and focus on the allusions to our Lord's person and titles, and an introductory discussion of the Pharisees may help us to appreciate them. Our Lord is attacked by some of the Pharisees. It is not said in the Gospels that all of the Pharisee party were hostile to our Lord. Nicodemus was a secret disciple, and at a certain point in his Gospel, St. John refers to many of the leaders being secret believers, secret for fear of the Jews, in John chapter 12 verse 42. Many Pharisees became members of the early church, as we read in the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 15 verse 5. However, while this is so, today's scene represents elements of the future cleavage between Judaism and Christianity. It is accepted that the dominant religious current in the flourishing of the Jewish religion after the sack of Jerusalem in 70 AD was the Pharisaical party. In other words, within classic revealed religion, two divergent streams appeared as from Jesus Christ and the sack of the temple in 70 AD, which he predicted. There was the Christian religion on the one hand, and the Jewish religion headed by the Pharisees on the other. As has been said, some Pharisees believed in Jesus Christ during his public ministry, and many came to believe in him after his resurrection, the most notable of whom was Saul of Tarsus. The Christian religion went on to endure persecution from the dominant Pharisaism and the Roman Empire. From the Pharisaic perspective, the crisis being faced hinged on the person of Jesus and his claims. As one Jewish tourist guide said during a walking tour of which I was part in Jerusalem, Jesus of Nazareth has had an incredible influence. Indeed so, because he is the incarnate God. He and his claims are unique. So it is that the hostility of the Pharisees in our gospel today from Luke chapter 6 verse 1 to 5 reminds us of Christ's claims, for which he endured persecution during his public ministry and went on to his death. To begin with, when attacked in our scene today, our Lord immediately alludes to the example of King David. Our Lord seems to place himself at that level. He is not merely the son of David, which all knew, but is himself another David. David, when hungry, entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Jesus' disciples were hungry too, and began to pick some ears of corn on the Sabbath, rub them in their hands, and eat the grain. Christ, as a second David, gave them permission to do this. But he is more than David. He is Lord. For, we read, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. We are reminded of Christ's repeated reference to the verse of the Psalm 110, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies a footstool for your feet." Matthew chapter 22 verse 44. Christ asks, if the Messiah is David's son, how can he be his Lord? There is a veiled intimation of his divinity, which is clearly implied in his claim to be Lord of the Sabbath, for only God can be Lord of the Sabbath. These are startling assertions. No prophet had claimed to be another David, indeed greater than David. He is Lord of the very Sabbath, stated openly to the Pharisees, whose special focus in religious zeal was the Sabbath observance. His being Lord of the Sabbath points to his claim to be the very Lord, and Thomas would acknowledge this before the risen Jesus. But there is more in our text of today, for our Lord refers to himself as the Son of Man. The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. This is a very common expression on the lips of Jesus Christ, and is used in conversation with his disciples and enemies alike. This fact must be taken as significant. While the term Son of Man has the connotation of one sharing in the humanity of all others, as in Ezekiel, who was addressed by God as Son of Man, it must mean more than this. The allusion is to Daniel's vision, Daniel chapter 7 verse 13 to 14. We read, "With the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, and all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him." Here then was another David, David's predicted successor, the one who would occupy his throne forever. Greater far than David, Jesus is the Messiah and Lord. He is the glorious Son of Man, to whom universal sovereignty has been granted, and he will at the end hand all back to God his Father, who will be all in all. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. Indeed, he is the Lord of all lords, the King of all kings. Those Pharisees who chose to oppose him did not know him because they had allowed their hearts to be blinded. Let us dwell on our simple scene today of Christ and his disciples passing through the cornfield, and of Christ asserting his universal authority over all things, including the most sacred elements of revealed religion. He is Lord.